But especially for learning Hebrew, it's really important that you not miss more than a set number in a series, right? It's
Right.
language learning requires layering hour on hour on hour of practice. So if you're worried that, this 9 a.m. thing means I'm going to miss more times than I'm going to be there, we can make some suggestions about, it's not a CBST class, but there are lots of fabulous Hebrew classes that we can recommend. We've got some magnificent tutors who are part of our CBST community. Mia Rothstein, who teaches these classes, is one of them. Ron Weiss, who teaches our
Right.
beginners
Oh,
class,
I
is
know.
one of
Right.
them. Larry Kay, who is a beloved teacher.
I know all three. I know two of the three. But the
So
thing is, I don't plan to
be
miss
around
it.
your
I
schedule.
just would watch it every day later. That's all.
Ah,
Make
well, I
that
mean, being
commitment.
in class is
Yeah.
really helpful, especially when we're doing Zoom learning. It's kind of rough, but that's my
Mm.
recommendation. It is 10
Okay.
o'clock.
Thank you.
We are going to get sung in today by the cantor Mimi. Um, and I can't wait to see what he has for us.
So I also just want to say I found the app that you mentioned,
Yeah.
and blessing for performing a civic duty was one that was a nice one that jumped out at me. So lots of cool things in there. So for today, I thought that I knew that we would be at least getting to Psalm 97 today, so I figured that I would share with you all one of my favorite settings. It's another Nava Tehillah, this prayer group in Jerusalem, but one of maybe their less known tunes for Or Zarua by Navot Ben Barak, Yoel Sykes, and Daphna Rosenberg. What I love about it, especially, is that the rhythm is in seven. For those of you who are familiar with musical meters, seven is an asymmetrical rhythm, and so for me, I like the fact because asymmetrical rhythms have this inherent kind of forward motion. So for me, it almost feels like that. It's that like sprint to the finish line approaching Shabbat. So this is their Or Zarua. And when I use this on a Friday night, I also, because it's the penultimate, Or Zarua is the penultimate verse, I tack on the last verse of the psalm with the nusach, the chanting that one would use on Friday night. So I'll demonstrate a little bit of that at the very end. This is Or Zarua. Ooh, and I should turn on my original sound. All these things that we remember. Okay. Zaru ala tzadik, zaru ala tzadik. Or zaru ala tzadik, zaru ala tzadik. Or zaru ala tzadik, zaru ala tzadik. Or zaru ala tzadik, zaru ala tzadik. Uleishrei lev simcha. Zaru ala tzadik, or zaru ala tzadik, zaru ala tzadik, or zaru ala tzadik, zaru ala tzadik, or zaru ala tzadik, zaru ala tzadik, uleishrei lev simcha. צדיקים באדוני והודו לזכר קודשו.
Oh, just gorgeous. And Jacob, I love how you sort of primed us to listen for that seven. And I could totally feel the like forward, exciting motion that's driving us towards the celebration of Shabbat. What a beautiful, beautiful selection. Um, I also wanted to make a quick note. Larry Finkelstein wrote to me to tell me that you all had sung an Or Zarua by Dan Nichols that was written at Goldman Union Camp Institute in 2000. And he asked me if I was there. And I was. It's one of my favorite settings of Or Zarua. And I will bring a recording that we did for our kids' high holiday services with our magnificent song leader Rachel Chang, who created a whole video layering her voice on top of itself, on top of itself, on top of itself. One of the things that we miss so much in this Zoom reality is these pieces that have these beautiful multi-part harmonies and rounds. Really hard for Cantor Nimi to accompany himself, to accompany himself, to accompany himself. So perhaps I will bring that video so you can hear all the voices layered together, though it is just the song of one voice. Harold, do we have any class announcements that we'd like to make before we dive into?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we have two class announcements. One is in response to the all of the notes that I have been getting, this study of the Psalms of Friday evening will continue. It will be somewhat open-ended. It may last as long as all week next week, so that we have a chance to study the Psalms one after the other with the seriousness that they demand. And we will have Cantor Nimi teaching us about the songs of the Psalm, settings of the Psalms of Friday evening service. So I think this is great. And thank you, Rabbi Rapport, for being so flexible in terms of doing this. And Rabbi Kleinbaum sends her regards and says it gives her a little more time to be on the bus with Randy, working on getting out the vote. Number two, I sent everyone an email. There is a collection of writings, responses to COVID, which was done by Rabbi Menachem Creditor, who had visited our class several months ago. They had asked for some class submissions, and I and Sherry had put together a group that we ran past Rabbi Kleinbaum, who made a final selection, sent it to them, and I am delighted to say that we have 12 CBST Psalms class members who are now either published authors for the first time or republished authors. I sent everyone an email that has the CBST selection in it. The book is available on Kindle or hard copy. It is a fundraiser for the UJA Federation's COVID relief funds. So congratulations to all of our authors. Not the last time we'll see our work in print, but really, Rabbi Creditor, they made a whole section just for the CBST authors with a foreword from Rabbi Kleinbaum, and he told us how impressed he was by the quality of all the work he received from us.
And I must say that this CBST has directly benefited from this COVID relief fund that the UJA has put together. It's a really, essential service that UJA has been providing to all of these New York area synagogues. And at CBST, it enabled us to be able to send Passover Sidarim, like catered Passover plates, to members who otherwise might not have been able to celebrate Seder this year with, the festival meal that comes along with it. We couldn't have done that without them, and it was a real mitzvah. It was a real, gesture of incredible thoughtfulness and compassion that allowed us to do it.
Sarah Sloan, just check your email. There's a link in your email with all the information necessary to order the book on Kindle.
And of course, if you are relatively new to the class or you've been putting it off for a minute and you aren't on Harold's email list, you'll know because you didn't receive the link to this magnificent book, and you should tell Harold that he can put you on his list. So just to recap really quickly, we finished Psalm 96, but we'll do a little bit of review. We are now not pushed up against must complete everything by Thursday and also hear all of these beautiful settings that Cantor Nimi has arranged for us to listen to, taking in the music of these Kabbalat Shabbat Psalms will extend into next week, which means that we can be somewhat leisurely about the way that we move through. We'll still be doing, let's read the whole Psalm in Hebrew, let's read the whole Psalm in English, let's look for the themes that tie them together as a rubric, a set that all go together with matching themes. It gives us the chance to do a little bit of review so that we're not just running through all the Psalms, but we get to return to the fact, how, why, when, exactly in what way are these the Psalms of Kabbalat Shabbat, given all 150 choices that one could make about what to include or what to exclude. It also means that Cantor Anemia is not limited to merely 60 minutes, 45 minutes if we're being honest, to show us all of the gorgeous musical settings that these Psalms have inspired, especially recently. So that's the plan for next week. Rabbi Kleinbaum may be joining us from locations at yet undisclosed, along the Get Out the Vote bus tour with the AFT. And was there any other announcements I wanted to make? Class today, where I'm getting better and better at navigating all the ways to invite participation and feedback about how this particular section of the class is taught. So today we are going to be looking at an interlinear translation of each of the Psalms, which means that Harold's going to share the Sepharia so we can see the Hebrew, see a pretty close translation of the English matched exactly. And then for the English reading, we'll take one of the pages of Sidor B'chol Levavcha and we'll listen to the translation that our CBST Sidor provides. Maybe if I can impose on Marcia Melnick, not today, but like sometime soon, we'll hear more about the creation of this Sidor and the incredible amount of work and artistry that's gone into every page. And then, as we move through and we're looking for themes, where we're sharing questions and comments and reflections that the Psalms inspire in us, by all means, raise your hand. We're going to call on the people who have their hands raised in the participant tab, because that helps us see like exactly how many, who was in chronological order. But if you have questions and, raising your hand virtually is a lot, please put them in the chat. I have enlisted Yael Bat Chava to be watching the chat and stopping me at any point that there's a relevant question about content, making sure that we've got kind of a collection of all the questions about a specific psalm that have been shared in the chat, that we can at certain pause points say, okay, what kind of questions do we have that we want to answer? And of course, Yael is incredibly knowledgeable. So if we've got questions about what was the root kabal again, she's right there to answer it. So without further ado, we went over Psalm 95 and 96 yesterday. These are 2 out of the 6 initial Psalms of Kabbalat Shabbat. Why are there 6? 95 through 99 and then 29, representing the 6 days of creation, which lead up to Shabbat. We then have a little break with L'cha Dodi. Some communities do a song called piyut called Ana Bechoach, which we'll look at really briefly. And then the singing of Psalm 92, which is particularly the psalm for Shabbat, bringing us to 7, the 7th day of creation, the day that God created rest. What are the 3 themes that I think you can see really beautifully and clearly running through each of these psalms, especially in that particular set from 95 to 99, skipping 94. 94 didn't feel like focusing on these themes whatsoever. The themes are creation. So beautiful language about the natural world and our awe and amazement at its miracles. So if you're looking at Psalm 96, the one that we studied yesterday, Yismechu Hashamayim, let the heavens rejoice, let the earth dance, let the sea churn with all the life that's in it, let the fields burst with plenty and the trees of the forest brim with dignity. That's a great example of that kind of naturalistic language that celebrates the work of creation.
What page is that?
That in our CBST Sidor is page 55, the translation, and Psalm 96, from which it comes, is page 54. And that's just one example. I'd love to hear other examples from the 2 Psalms we've studied that you loved of this naturalistic appreciation. Put them in the chat. What are your absolute favorite lines that refer to the earth and all its glory? That's theme number 1, the earth. Theme number 2 is sovereignty, God's royal presence, really calling God the architect, the creator, the ruler of all the universe, who has put these things in order. And so if you're looking at Psalm 95, which is where we started, pages 52 and 53 in the Sidor, a great example of that is, for you, eternal, are great, greater than all the would-be gods, which is a little like nerve-wracking for some of us who love to think of like clearly monotheistic ideas about God, but ki el gadol Adonai umelech gadol al kol ha'elohim, this idea that God reigns supreme. And we see that coming up over and over again in these Psalms. And if you have a memory of one of those particular lines that talked about God's sovereignty, the second of our three themes, you can put that in the chat. Perfect examples of these two themes. And finally, the last is gratitude. And it's just expressing appreciation for God's compassionate, creative, and also ingenious sovereignty. Like, thank God you're the God that's above all of the other gods. Appreciation of the world as it surrounds us and ways that we can show that appreciation. So, for instance, just think of the opening lines of those two Psalms that we studied so far, 95 and 96. Lechu neranena ladonai, come, let us sing to the eternal, ring out praises. And in Psalm 96, Shiru ladonai, shir chadash, Shiru ladonai kol haaretz, I sing a new song to you, and the earth sings too. These are the ways that we express gratitude for God, and you're going to see this gratitude theme build out more and more as we move through these Psalms. So,
Rabbi, if I could just have 1 minute.
Yes.
One of the other announcements was that the class will be running until 10:45. Since we've added days, we don't have to go on until 11, correct? And if I could ask the people, I already see some hands. There's been some feedback that we would like to hear Rabbi Rapport's teaching until she stops to ask questions to be answered. So if you have a particular question that you believe could be answered, just put it in the chat and Yael and I will do our best to answer it. And if not, we will raise it with the group. But hold off with general comments until Rabbi Rapport pauses, at which time we'll get them. So I do see Jeff and Shep. If you can write your questions in chat, I would appreciate it, or we will hold them until a break.
All right, the break was now. I just wanted to make sure that we had like a really solid sense of these three themes that we were looking for that weave and tie all of these 7 Psalms together. Any questions about those three themes, why those are the themes we're looking for in the Kabbalat Shabbat Psalms? If you've got favorite lines that reflect any of those themes, I see them in the chat already, which is magnificent. And if there are no questions about what we're looking for, then we're going to dive into 97. So Shep and Jeff, do you have questions about those themes that we're looking for? I saw Shep put his hand down. Jeffrey, do you still have something that you want to ask?
Well, the questions I keep coming up with is, are they really talking about God or the human rulers? Because I studied Elizabethan history. I was a big fan of King Henry VIII and Queen Elizabeth I. I noticed the way they talked to King Henry VIII and Queen Elizabeth, or to other rulers, the English rulers, they would say the same things like your majesty, your lordship. In fact, England has the House of Lords.
Yeah.
So I'm just
Jeffrey,
saying, I'm wondering.
fascinating kind of chicken and egg question. You know, do we talk about God this way because we talk about human rulers this way? Or do we talk about human rulers this way because we talk about God this way? And in especially, you know, as you're describing the British royalty, like when you think about the amount of power any of those rulers had at their fingertips, it's pretty divine. And the sense that royalty was descended and chosen by divine, that it was you know, royal right to rule with unfettered power. Great question that I wonder myself.
Because I see the Psalms, I keep thinking of King David. That's what I want to say.
Yeah, of course. Great, perfect segue, you know, with David purportedly as the author of all of these Psalms. Okay, so the choice of these 7 Psalms, there is, we can all kind of agree on these themes no matter where in the world we're welcoming Shabbat, but particularly the ordering of these 7 as opposed to others, and always these 7 is particularly Ashkenazi, but you can see selections of these, especially Psalm 29, which is in Ashkenazi Sephardi, Mizrahi Rite. And then, of course, you can't even say that any of those particular geographic swaths are monolithic. You know, within the Mizrahi Rite, you've got the Yemeni tradition. And then of Yemen, you've got all of these different individual towns and synagogues that have their own practice. So for instance, CBST, we always pick from among these Psalms, but we don't sing all 7. We kind of choose the selection that we think befits this particular Shabbat. That's a thing that we do that you can't say that like, oh, American Jews do, or New York Jews do, or gay Jews do. So remember that there's lots and lots of differentiation and variation within any of these general statements. All right, my friends, let us look at Psalm 97. Remember, if you've got immediate questions, put them in the chat. Yael will pause me. And Harold is going to put up the interlinear translation of Psalm 97. If you're following along in CBST's Siddur, we're on page 56 and 57. But never fear, we will share our CBST translation once we get through the Hebrew, and we can follow along in the English as the Hebrew is being read. Can I have a
Yes,
Hebrew?
Sarah Siegel. Sarah Siegel has already volunteered.
Thank you, Sarah. Fabulous.
Are we going straight through or Hebrew, English, Hebrew, English?
Straight through in the Hebrew, if you would, Sarah. Thank you.
All right. Adonai malach tagel haaretz, yismechu im rabim, anan ve'arafel svivav, tzedek u'mishpat mechon kis'o, eish lefanav telech, utlahet saviv tzarav, he'ir ורקב תבל, ראתה ותחל הארץ, הרים כדונג נמסו, מלפני אדוני, מלפני אדון כל הארץ, הגידו השמיים צדקו, וראו כל העמים כבודו. יבושו כל עובדי פסל, המתהללים באלילים, השתחוו לו כל אלוהים. שמעה ותשמח ציון, ותגלנה בנות יהודה, למען משפטך אדוני. כי אתה אדוני עליון, על כל הארץ, מאוד נעלית. על כל אלוהים, אוהבי אדוני שנאו רע, שמר נפשות חסידיו, מיד רשעים יצילם, אור זרוע לצדיק ולישרי לב שמחה, שמחו צדיקים באדוני והודו לזכר קדשו.
Gorgeous. Well read, Sarah, especially for a psalm where we typically only do the last 2 verses that are in our like collective muscle memory. Fabulous. So I saw that Aura volunteered to read the English translation from our CBST Siddur.
Okay, let me take this down and put that up.
Wonderful. Thank you.
97. Okay, 96. 97.
You, eternal, are sovereign. Let the earth rejoice, the continents be glad. Though dark clouds and mist envelop you, right and justice bear up your throne. Fire goes before you, flames surround you. Your lightning flashes throughout the world. The earth beholds and trembles. Mountains melt like wax at your presence before the first of all the world. Your justice the heavens declare, your glory all people behold. Shame covers those who worship emptiness, who pride themselves on nothingness. Those who take pride in false gods, open yourselves to the truth. Zion hearing this is glad, the cities of Judah rejoice. Despise evil all those who love God, who protect them from those who do wrong, who protect them from those who are cruel. May light be sown for the righteous and joy for the true of heart. May the righteous find joy in God. Give thanks for the memory of holiness.
Wonderful. Thank you. And I just happened to be looking at my chat notification that Yael is also tracking the sources from which these particular translations come, that a lot of them are by Yehuda Berger and this one in particular. But, as Ira noticed yesterday, taking from all of the fabulous translations of the Psalms that are available, like Avery Fisher's translation. Altars didn't exist yet, but I bet we would have loved it. I'd love to hear, what are some of the lines that stand out to you that represent those three themes that we're constantly looking for: the natural world, God as sovereign, like ultimate ruler, and appreciation in general, or for those two things specifically.
Linda Solomon's hand shot right up. Linda.
I had to unmute. First of all, I was struck with the use of, I don't know whether Yehuda did it intentionally, but if you scroll down a little bit to the next few lines, Harold, there was something there that I specifically, when he says, despise evil all those who love God, who protect them from those who do wrong. I'm not sure I understand why Yehuda did that grammatically. Whether it should be who protects them, or if he purposely left it in the singular. So that was something that struck me. But what really struck me about the themes was this um, charge to people to show God gratitude, to show God your righteousness by loving Him, by loving God.
This is Linda, that's beautiful and well noticed. So there's often a reciprocal relationship in the the great things that God has done for us, which kind of begs the question: what are the great things that we do for God? We are in a brit, right? We are in a covenant, which indicates that there have to be two partners. Maybe they're not two equal partners, but there are two partners. So God has done all of these amazing things for us, the creation of the natural world among them. And what do we do to fulfill our part of the bargain of this brit? We offer praise. We offer gratitude. Thank you.
Who's,
Not only that, but we also charge others to show gratitude. I think
Exactly right.
that's
Thank
what
you.
strikes me here, is that it's not only a personal gratitude, it's a charge to other people to act the same.
Yep. Thank you. Okay, so I noticed that Liz and Barbara have their collective hand raised, and that's who I want to jump to first. So tell us, what did you notice, or what kind of questions do you have?
All right, so it's Liz, and and I guess what I noticed, Harold, if you move up a little more, it was that sense of light. Whoops, thank you. Fire goes before you, flames surround you, your lightning flashes, and then later we go down to something about light again. If you go up a little more, continue a little more. I'm sorry, Harold.
Yeah, like or zarua lat tzaddik, light is sown for the
Yeah,
righteous, perhaps.
yes, and light is sown for the righteous. So that sense of light, that very, very, this is not soft light. This is very strong
Yeah.
light, and I was just struck by that.
Absolutely. And I love that as a theme within this particular song, because we have to remember these are individual compositions. They don't merely exist in relationship to one another. And what a beautiful thread that goes all the way through its language, this sense of light. And as you noticed, like not so much a gentle dappling of the sun, which we heard in a previous psalm, but a strong light, a light with power. Lovely, lovely. Harold, who else is raising their hand? I'm also asking Harold to call on people who it's the first time we've heard them speak this week, or it's the first time we've heard them speak. They get to line jump a little bit, and then we're going to return and make sure we get everybody. So go ahead, Harold.
Sarah Sloan has had her hand up for quite a while, and I will repeat what the rabbi said. There are approximately 80 people in the class, and we'd love to hear from everyone. Those of you who have never said anything, those of you who feel that what you say might not be as scholarly as some of the others, we want to make sure that everyone's voice is heard in this class. And now we'll hear Sarah Sloan's voice.
Okay, what struck me was fire goes before you, flames surround you. Not just the light, the theme of the light of fire, but fire as a precursor to God. And God, and the flames surround God, surround you, surround God, that they're also a protection. It's like God is saying, if you follow me, I will protect you.
And so I can't promise that this is a direct line of allusion starting with an A, a reference to a literary feature that we may have heard before in the same kind of text, but certainly there is a symbol here. The fire goes before you, maybe a reference to the pillar of fire that led the children of Israel through the desert. Plenty of other suggestions of like where the fire goes before you might also link to some more grisly and barbecue focused than others. But I particularly like the one about the pillar of fire going before you in the desert, and your flames surround you, your lightning flashes throughout the world. That makes me think of the prophet Ezekiel's Merkava, the chariot vision, where God is surrounded by terrible but beautiful flames. I also want to notice that Ruthie picked up on not only the light, but the dark. The dark clouds and mist envelop you. Well noticed, Ruthie, that you've got both sides of that coin, the light and the darkness. And if we think about some of the other language that was happening at the time, a lot of other ancient Near Eastern traditions had a god of light and then a separate god of darkness. They had dualism. These two things would fit together and counterbalance. And it's sort of an innovation to say there is one God who encompasses light and darkness, that both these things are divine. Okay, Harold, who's next?
Ruth Bourbon. Ruthie?
Yes. You
had your hand
mentioned
up.
the light and through dark clouds, etc. Personally, I deal with all of the Psalms in my connection with God. And as a young person, I came from an ultra-Orthodox home. The only place I was truant was in Hebrew school. And I'm sorry, because although I have gone to many synagogues and followed kashrut and on and on and on, until I came to CBST, I didn't recognize what I didn't know. So this Psalm class is so important to me, because I may know the prayers, I may be able to sing them all by heart, etc. But the internal emotional happening is happening now with the Psalms. And so I bring it to today. And when I pray, I bring it to today. And when I'm going through today in relationship, not only personally, but in every which way. And I want to thank you, because it's such a beautiful emotional time for me. I thank you all in your genius as poets, your questions, your answers. I thank you very much.
Oh, Ruthie, we thank you. It is a whole reciprocal breach of thanks that we have going. We love you. I want to take a quick pause to ask Yael, anything in the chat that we want to address, any specific concrete questions? I know there's lots of gorgeous observations about those three themes, but anything we should pause for?
I don't see anything that is I think everybody can read it, and it's answering your question about the three themes. So
that's what I love to hear. Thank you, Yael. Harold, who's next?
Jerry Dratfield or Simon, I never quite know.
Today it's me. So the continued anthropomorphism of the natural world, I really appreciate you raising that. The earth beholds and trembles. But my question is, Yehuda has at the end, may the righteous find joy in God, give thanks for the memory of holiness. And I wonder, because I don't understand Hebrew, if you might go back to the Hebrew, is the word memory? I mean, how did we get to the memory of holiness? That's a little unique.
Yeah, so it really is a pretty accurate translation. We could jump back to the Sefaria to see how they translate it too, but the Hodu lezecher code show, and we recognize that root zecher, Zayin Chaf Resh, as Zichrona Livracha, may their memory be for a blessing. Our Yizkor service, our service of memory, that is the root. So it is a question about, should we think of this as a trace that is left to us the way that memory feels, or is it a constant reminder to acclaim God's holiness? And I think that both are possible in terms of the translation. And memory and reminder are linked in their English translations, but in Hebrew it's even closer.
Well, that would coincide with what you said about the fire going before you.
Yeah.
Whole aspect of it. Thank you.
Sure. Who's next?
One of our poets, Randy Sarakoff.
Not unmuted, Randy. Try again.
How about now?
Yes.
Better.
All right. So I wanted to piggyback on what Ruthie had said, because I find myself in everyday world using words like righteous and evildoers. So I see a lot of what's going on in politics as the evildoers versus the righteous. So of course I want to spend every day trying to become more righteous. Going back to the themes of Shabbat, the creation part I don't see too much, because a lot of what is in here seems to be about lightning in a non-beautiful type way. But I do see strongly God is sovereign in this particular psalm. I would say, all the way up into the last 3 verses, and then we get to the gratitude. And the last 3 verses really speak to me. God despises evil, and loves those who are just and righteous. May the righteous find joy in God. And I also have a problem with that last sentence, because I'm not sure where memory fits in. But
and maybe it serves better as a reminder instead of memory when you're internalizing it personally, that you could be reminded of righteousness, of the joy that you find in God, even when it's difficult, which is one of the things that Shabbat allows us, right? A pause so that we can dig back into the well that we've created of joy, of rest, of renewal. And we all need that reminder, especially when it gets to be Friday.
Exactly. But this is another one reminding us that God loves the righteous and despises the evildoer, but the evildoer has a chance to redeem him or herself through, no lies, through the broader Psalms. Evildoers are people that lie, was in one of the Psalms, or multiple Psalms. That also stands out in today's world. And when given a chance to change, do they? God doesn't just say, you lie, therefore you're an evildoer, therefore I have I despise you. It's change your evil ways, given a chance to change the ways. And I personally don't see that right now in our particular politics, but we must be, as Rabbi Kleinbaum says, we must be as good, righteous as they are evil, to not allow evil to decrease the holiness from the world by our increasing holiness in the world. And I think this psalm kind of brings it all together for me.
I'm really glad to hear that. It's a beautiful psalm, and how nice that we get to hear it practically every Shabbos.
Thank you.
Rabbi, it's 10:38. We have a few more minutes. If you wanted to either go to more input or to wrap up this psalm for us so we can start on another one tomorrow, it's your choice.
I definitely want to have us feel complete around this particular psalm. I see that a couple hands are still up. And I think that everybody's really done a great job of finding the themes that I wanted us to look for in these psalms, that arch through these psalms. As Randy noticed, some of them are much heavier on the natural world. Some of them are much heavier on God's sovereignty, but you can kind of see all those features here. So I would love to do, I'm going to sort of put a timer on it, that if the people who have their hands raised currently could keep their responses to 1 minute, then I'd love to hear you share them. If you need more than a minute, I totally get that. And if you want to write them and put them in the chat, you can take much more time that you need. And then we'll ask Cantor Nimi to sort of bless our study of this psalm by hearing Or Zarua again.
Sarah
So,
Siegel.
Sarah, Judy, Ira, and Benjamin.
Yes, and
3
that's
people think that they can summarize in about a minute what struck them.
So is it common in the Psalms for the author to write, those of you who are worshiping false gods, get busy and come over here instead? Like, do we proselytize in these Psalms? Is this like a common thing, or is this the only place where we see that?
I don't disagree with the description of proselytize, but I think that many of us carry a connotation with it of evangelism, which is like an active sharing of the good news. You got to go like chase down the people and sell them on your God. And we think of Judaism as a religion that doesn't do that. And as you can see in our text, we really think that we've got the brand on truth and right, and we are kind of concerned for those people who are off the path, off the derech. And through our text, we have this reminder, we have this trace of, if this is important to you, one of the ways to do righteousness in the world is to make sure that everybody else is doing righteous, which means that you need to share what your definition of righteous is. And that can be inspiring, or that can be kind of uncomfortable. So yes, Sarah, it shows up in other places too. It's not just this psalm, and it's not just the Psalms.
Judy Hollander.
Just quickly, it's a sort of a little bit under the area. Shame covers those who worship emptiness and who pride themselves on nothingness. And I looked at a traditional, and there is the idea of idols. And I just wanted to point out how absolutely beautiful those phrases are, and how much more sense they make to us, or to me, than idols.
Beautiful. I'm really glad that you provided us with that other thoughtful translation and association.
Ira, and I see you have your Fisher in hand.
Nice.
Ira just disappeared. He was right there. All right,
Okay.
Ben, and then we'll get back to Ira if he reappears.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm particularly struck with verses 3, 4, and 5 that combine both the natural world and the sovereignty, which is so powerful that it can melt mountains.
Yeah, and I saw that many other people were moved by that particular metaphor. We saw it consistently both in Safaria's translation and Yehuda's translation. And this is, we can take the theme of natural world in many ways, but you could describe God's sovereignty plenty of different ways to describe power. To be able to, Benjamin, as you said, describe it as something so powerful it could melt mountains, that is striking. And that is, particular and beautiful and unique to this psalm and this set of psalms.
And I think
Ira's back.
Ira's back. Ira, with Fisher in hand.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
we can hear you.
I didn't go anywhere. Anyway.
Oh.
I don't know what happened. I tend to resonate with Fisher a lot, so I always look at his version of things. And just going back to the very last line about the memory, where our translation says, give thanks for the memory of holiness, Fisher flips it and says, and give thanks for the holiness of memory. Ooh. And that may not be as literal a translation from the Hebrew, but
no, it could work. It could totally work. I think Benjamin
makes so much more sense to me that way.
Benjamin and Yael can definitely argue with me on this, but I think that the holiness of memory, and notice that particularly in the Hebrew it says kodsho, it's possessive God's holiness. If we were being truly literal, it would be his holiness. All right.
We will go back to Cantor Nimi to sing us out. I will say that I feel such creativity in the group now. We will not be sharing offerings from these psalms. However, Those of you who feel like you would like to write something should do two things: post it into Facebook and send it to Annika. We want to make sure that we're keeping track of everything that everyone has written, and we will be distributing it in PDF so that everybody gets to see it. So feel free to write, post your offerings, post any of your thoughts in Facebook. And as the rabbi said, if you're somehow on this call, but you are not on our email or our Facebook group, get in touch with me and I will take care of that. And with that, Cantor.
All right. So sing us out with the same melody we sang in this melody from Nava Tehillah. Or zaru ala tzadik, zaru ala tzadik. 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 Uleish re'lev simcha. Zaru ala tzadik, zaru ala tzadik. Uleish re'lev simcha. Uleish re'lev simcha. Uleish re'lev simcha. Uleish re'lev simcha. Tzadikim Adonai Vehodu lezecher kodsho.
Thank you, Cantor. So
All
when
right,
we
everyone.
when we see each other tomorrow, Cantor Nimi will be offering some musical selections about the 3 Psalms that we've studied so far. And we will continue next week with Psalm 98, 99, 29, and 92. Hopefully some 93 in there. Have a wonderful afternoon, everybody. See you tomorrow.